Cool, cool, cool. All right, guys. All right. We are back again for another episode of Wyckoff Sundays. We're going to start off reviewing what we spoke about last week, what we thought could potentially happen, and then we're going to go into what we can potentially see happening this coming week as well. We might be in an interesting place here, so I'm definitely excited to share with you guys what I might be thinking could be going down for this new week. All right. So let's go ahead and tap in. So firstly, last week was obviously episode 23, right? We did end up having the market essentially come off of a big push to the downside from the week before. This was caused by NFP, or rather NFP was like right around here. So really NFP really just finished the move, but the move had already begun the day before, right? So top of the move was the day before, and we did end up having a beautiful sell-off to the downside. That was something that we also did call out. That was possible on this episode, right? Now, what we basically said was two main options, right? The first thing that we were kind of thinking, obviously, was that there was a good area of manipulation here where we could be seeing the market trading back up into this area to go ahead and give us, essentially our next push to the downside, right? This is kind of the idea of us really holding order flow and seeing us come, lower to go ahead and start to buy again, so we can start to head towards 102 on dollar, right? Now, as we could see, what did end up happening during the week, we did have a push to the upside to start off the week, right? So where did the week start, basically? Let's see. The week started right around here, right? And so we started to come up, and my biggest issue was one of the things that I did mention on last week's Wyckoff Sundays was we didn't really want to see a very fast engulfment, right? If we were going to go ahead and retrace back to these areas, we didn't want to see price be very quick into those levels, because if that was the case, this could end up being like a bottom where we just end up, again, continuing to rocket through the highs, right? In this case, as you guys can see, throughout the entire week, we didn't really move quickly at all. To be honest, for the most part, I mean, price kind of stayed in the same relative range for the majority of the week, right? If we look at it from, this low to this high, really, right? This is where, price action was majority of the time. We did see price get outside of that range a couple of times, right, here and here. But in general, it was a little bit more of a consolidated week, right? But regardless, so the type of price action that we had coming back into the high definitely, could have given a potential sell opportunity. For me personally, I didn't really see this happening. I did mark up some liquidity here, but I did want to see the market just go ahead and retrace back into an area like that before actually seeing the next push to the upside. And unfortunately, we did not get that retracement, right? We really just continued to head to the downside like this. So I don't know if anybody did manage to, play that out, right? Again, we did just barely miss the zone that we had marked up here on the previous Wyckoff Sunday. But, again,
Really
it
the
didn't
only
really
way that
quite give us, the full-on setup that we would have wanted. Like, for example, the internal liquidity sweep, we were looking for that to take the high. Didn't do so, right? So for me, not really the best. And then obviously the second opportunity that we were thinking of was, okay, maybe we just continue to come lower, we get an accumulation, and then we can look to buy, right? Now, obviously, as you guys can understand, my bias on dollar is long-term long. But because of the way that this high had been created and everything like that, we were kind of thinking we might still get one more drive to the downside. Now, for me personally, from what happened last week, I mean, nothing like really too great in terms of, the sell setup, right? So because the market kind of consolidated, I think that, again, it's probably just going to transfer into this week. But we'll talk about what I can see happening for this week in a bit. So that's just what we said last week for dollar, right? We did see the slow walk up that we wanted to see, like we spoke about over here, right? Kind of get price to slowly get up there and then come down. We didn't get quite as high as we wanted to, but then after that, the sell setup did appear, right? Now, the other side of this idea was with Euro USD. So really what we wanted to see with what we were talking about with Euro USD was two main possibilities. Obviously, right, like two main zones really that we spoke about, right? So firstly, it was, going ahead and seeing this high go ahead and get taken. Obviously, we did not see that so far. The high from NFP of the week before has held up. And even the high that we were saying, like, as you guys can see over here, what we spoke about was even the potential of, this zone here actually holding up for us, right? So I'll go ahead and just kind of replay that section there.
down candle, it's basically an internal sweep, right? 2 hour as well, we can see that even better, just barely getting above that candle, internal sweep, trap candle on the way down as well, right? Like there's some decent price action here to see the market go ahead and come lower, right? So that is kind of the question, isn't it? I mean, like, is this retest here a sign that this high here from NFP is going to hold, right? Or is it just generating more liquidity so we can do one more sweep, right? I would love to see one more sweep, which I feel like I'm saying all the time. But you guys know, like, I would rather really see price get up and above extreme areas during those New York sessions, during those news events, to give us that best indication of like, okay, this can be the high.
So again, right, really that was kind of the main two scenarios we spoke about. For me, we went ahead and saw this price, this zone here that we spoke about, the internal sweep that we see on multiple time frames here. Sorry, yeah. That we see on multiple time frames here, right? So we do see the internal sweep of that high right there, right? We see the market go ahead and start to trade lower. And, we get a bit of a downtrend here, and price even gets back into that area, but doesn't quite break it. Sorry, doesn't quite break it there either. So there is some sign of this potentially still holding as an order flow potential. As you guys can see, it did hold. But we will go ahead and talk about this a little bit later. But again, like for me, price really just consolidated last week, right? Not really too much here in terms of, really seeing any type of expansion. So there were some short-term trade opportunities here, but nothing really long-term, nothing really higher time frame has happened yet. So we're still kind of in the same place, to be honest, relatively as we were last week. I mean, we're basically almost at the same price, to be honest. It looks like last week we were at 1.1432. Yeah, so 3.2 was about up here, so we're like, what, 20 pips difference from last week or so, right? So really only 20 pips movement, in total from the close of last week to the close of this week. So again, that kind of, more signs of consolidation, which again will lead me into what I think will probably happen for the coming week later on. Now, we also spoke about GU, right? Main zone, we said we wanted to see GU reach up into this area, and then from here, potentially, if we could maybe end up seeing a distribution to bring the market down, I believe is what we were looking for here, if I'm not mistaken.
First, I would like to see both of those happen, right? Hold up. That can be a zone that we can sweep first, right? But one thing's for sure is we're going to want to see these highs here get taken, I would say, right?
So yeah, just again, looking for those highs there to get taken, start to reach up into those levels. As you guys can see, GU, again, reaching up into there, right? We did point out this internal liquidity that happened here. And after price took that internal liquidity so far, we're kind of seeing this push to the downside here starting to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see what really happens here with GU. Again, I will talk about what I think can happen in a little bit here, but that's what we said for last week. Again, not too much of a change. We didn't get a big reaction from those levels, right? Same thing with AU. We didn't even reach up into the zone. Like, price barely moved for currency, to be real. And then we spoke about gold, right? So gold, what we spoke about was the potential for this zone here to get tapped into, right? So basically the idea was to initially see the sell, and then maybe from here we can end up getting the buy to the upside, I believe is what I said for gold, right?
Into this trap candle, right? Hopefully below at least that minimum, this wick here, which I do think will lead us into 4080, right? So below 4100 and, around 4080 is going to be really the priority. But basically this last sweep is going to be the idea there.
So yeah, basically we're looking for that gold lower towards that level and then to see if it could buy from there. As you guys can see here, oh, it looks like I deleted my gold markup for some reason, but we'll go ahead and redo that. So here was really the zone that we spoke about, was like 4080, right? 4080 right around there, right? And again, this is where the market went ahead and opened up, was right here. We had one more sweep of the high, and then it was just downtrend straight down into the level that we spoke about, which was really this trap candle here. Looks like price did drive even a little bit lower from that, with a good push to the downside. So really hit our minimum target, and then we're going to see again later on. I'll talk to you guys about what I'm thinking for this coming week. And then same thing here for silver, right? I believe we were looking for this zone here to get hit, so basically just a pullback, and as you guys can see, price perfectly came into that zone. It did end up really getting extremely deep into there, but as we can see, it did not pass the low that we were talking about here on Wyckoff Sunday, as you can see. So
gold were to come down to there, right? Maybe silver could come down as well into some of these previous zones. It looks like silver's relative zone is right here, right, compared to gold, but it is a much different structure because silver did not sweep and gold did sweep, right, last week. So yeah, but the buys there from Wyckoff Sunday last week were clean. So we have gold there we have silver.
So yeah, again, just you know, relative to gold, you know, really this was the zone that I had marked up from before. I think we were talking about this being a relative zone, right? But again, it is a little bit different, you know, for one holding order flow and one not, because gold did sweep the low, like we said there, while silver actually ended up holding it and just kind of holding the order flow. So for me, definitely an interesting look here for silver. You know, again, this zone that we had, you know, shown there on Wyckoff Sundays, right? We were really saying, all right, we'll probably end up reaching back into that level before then starting to head to the upside, and look at what we got there, right? I mean, pretty much, you know, beautifully playing out in that way. All we had was the sweep of the high, and then price just kind of walking its way down to continue that. So we'll see what happens here with silver. Again, we'll talk about the future here in a little bit, but that was kind of what we were talking about there. US 30, we talked about the potential of a sell-off, right? We did end up getting a sell on US 30. Right, just ended up happening with one more high, right? So as you can see here, there was a good opportunity regardless. This was the zone that we really spoke about, you know, on Wyckoff Sundays last week. I believe one of the trades that Steve showed today was essentially from this zone here on Wyckoff Sundays, if I'm not mistaken. Might be wrong. I think it is, right? So yeah, like this was basically the zone that we spoke about there on Wyckoff Sundays. We'll go ahead and show where so we marked up this zone here, right? That was just there, and then we said, all right, maybe we can end up seeing the sell-off happen from there. Price reacted from that zone pretty nicely, created a new low, and then after that we had like this wick here, right, happen, and then basically just continue the push to the upside, right? And then after one more push up, I mean, that was basically it, right? So we have this distribution here, and then pretty much just a sell-off really out of nowhere, to be real. You know, not really too much sign here to really find a trade or in here or anything, but definitely a beautiful sell-off and almost reaching towards the liquidity that we spoke about. For me, you know, that could end up being a target. We'll talk about that a little bit later, though, if it is to be, right? And then we spoke about NAS as well, to reach the lows, right? And we did speak about this zone as well on Wyckoff Sundays for NAS, if I'm not mistaken.
So yeah, I mean, basically just looking for this order flow to continue. Out of everything, I like NAS the best. US 30 also is probably the lowest risk to, that US 30s hold that. And this makes sense to see the market head lower, right? So fingers crossed, we'll take a look, right? And yeah, for NAS and stuff, right? Really inside of this push to the upside as a whole, right? And I'm still gonna make the brave attempt to think, all right, can we actually get these shorts to take place, right? At least towards 28,200, right? Unless this whole thing is a reaccumulation, which it could be. But again, I'm going to lean towards that because of the price action we've been having in the highs, because of how difficult it has been to short and how simple it's been to buy. I think that we will end up eventually getting this distribution to play out and the divergence as well, right? US 30 taking those highs, S&P and NAS holding the order flow, showing some more distribution signs with this sweep, with that sweep, right? So it's interesting. Now, crypto.
So yeah, so for NAS there, like we saw, right, this was really the zone that we had marked up, you know, institutional candle here on the higher time frame, as we could see here on the 4 hour, right? You could see it as well on the 2 hour. I think that was the time frame that we really spoke about. We can see how the market went ahead and just barely ran this high for that zone. So that was really the zone that we were looking for the shorts, and, you know, price essentially traded right back into there at, you know, the open, you know, or not at the open, but not at the open of the week, but I believe it was the New York market open here. Yeah, right around here at 10 a.m. So New York market open, price trading into that area, and then got a really nice sell-off. Of course, what we had really spoken about was 28,200 to get hit. Did not happen, right? And we did end up seeing the market just go back up towards the area that we were speaking about here. So we'll talk about indices here in a little bit. But yeah, definitely interesting. Again, we did have a pretty good sweep there during the week. So yeah, seeing this and then getting towards this point of liquidity, I mean, definitely a very easy partial zone, I would say, for everyone to take, you know, that trade, right? So beautiful zone there on NAS, right? Definitely played out pretty beautifully, as you guys can see, right? So that's NASDAQ. BTC was the next one that we spoke about. We were talking about the longs from 60K, and I believe we did not get the pullback that we wanted, right? So price did end up, you know, getting this sell-off here, but nothing crazy, right? Did not reach into the zone that we really wanted. It's possible it already got mitigated in that area there, but yeah, BTC not quite reaching our area. And the other option, obviously, that we did have was, you know, price to just continue the order flow, make a new low, and then continue to, push from there. Again, I am starting to get bullish again on BTC. Again, the volume divergence here is looking pretty decent, right? Very, very high point of volume here, like we spoke about already. That's what we said last week. So it's still kind of playing out, still in the process of playing out. We could still get another low with low volume, right? You know, we haven't really seen the volume pick up at all. So because the volume hasn't picked up, it is definitely possible that we're getting, you know, another low where we will get, you know, low volume. And then after that, see the volume start to pick up after phase C would basically be what we would want, right? So that's BTC as well, right? So that's pretty much everything that we were looking for last week. You know, again, basically still, you know, the same idea this week as well. So we'll go into it. So for dollar, all right, for US dollar, the way that we behaved last week was definitely interesting. At least at the end of the week, it was interesting to me because as we could see here, I mean, like I said before, dollar really just consolidating, not really going anywhere, right? We did see the market open up where did the market open up? Right here. Right, so market opened up right here and the market closed right there. So again, didn't really do anything at all, right? We really haven't moved anywhere. You know, we didn't even tap into the extreme area of the high. But what I will say that we did do at the end of the week last week that I thought was really interesting was this 4-hour down candle here, right? So as you guys can see, we do have this big down move right here, right? And, you know, again, seeing how the market went ahead and just barely broke this low right here. I'm going to go ahead and draw a line across. As you guys can see, like price just barely broke that low, like essentially with just like a couple of points there. You know what I mean? Like really just barely moving below it, but it definitely has a big push down, right? So not only is it taking this low, right, but it's also taking this low and these lows all at the same time. So that low to me it's looking kind of interesting. You can really make the case for dollar to have been, you know, potentially looking at that as an internal sweep of liquidity, right? If this entire push to the downside here is truly a sweep, right? In terms of like, you know, again, we could see how fast that push to the downside really was. We could see the relatively equal lows that were created just before. I mean, it kind of does make me wonder, all right, do we end up seeing the market actually hold this low from NFP? Right, you know, we say always, like we want to see New York session highs, like or New York session lows create something, or news event lows create something. This is a news event low. This is a New York session low. So although there is the part of me that wants to go ahead and see dollar go ahead and do one more sweep, I think we have some real potential here, given that price action at the end of the week, to see this low actually hold, right? And not only that low, but if we go here to the 1-hour time frame, we can see the way how we had this, you know, institutional down candle here that really traded back into that level after the impulsive phase. So could it be that this here is the manipulation phase? This is our impulsive phase. Could this be our mitigation phase? And now we're in the middle of our continuation to go ahead and reach towards 102. I think that there's a lot of, you know, evidence to potentially point us in that direction, right? So firstly, you know, I mean, the very obvious trend line to the downside, I think this is going to be liquidity. I think we're seeing this liquidity on a lot of other pairs as well. So is it possible that this here could end up being our zone for a type 1 entry model? Because as it is right now, technically it's already there, right? For something like that. Right, so the price action is kind of showing some potential for, again, that next impulse to the upside. So because of the way that price action really played out in this low, I mean, I'm definitely interested in this zone here for dollar to go ahead and drive that higher, right? Again, I think that if we actually look at, you know, again, this low here, right, could that end up getting taken? Potentially later, like it could happen, right? I'm not going to say it can, but I do think that this low here is worth the try in case we don't get that. Because again, last week what I did say was that I wanted to see price kind of get that pull back up, give us the sell-off, and then down here accumulate and give us the push back up, right? It might just not give that opportunity, right? It could be that price was consolidating all of last week, right? We get the sweep of all the lows, right? Because now every single low since last week, since the week before last week, so since, you know, since before Wyckoff Sundays episode 23, right? All those lows have been taken except for the NFP low, right? So could it be that that NFP low is actually a trigger for us to really go long term, and then now we just have this internal sweep to bring us back up? I mean, you know, the signs are there, right? The signs are definitely there. So I think that one thing's for sure, we probably will break 101.08. So if we manage to pull back here without reaching towards this high, So without the market reaching up to here, I think it's worth it for a potential move to the upside. You know what I mean? So that's basically what I'm looking at here for dollar. I mean, to me, it looks very interesting, for a potential type 1 entry model, with this NFP low here, right? I guess technically we would have to use this low, right? Technically, unless we get some signs of manipulation in this area. Let's make sure we get that really worth it here. But yeah, 1 to 3.5 I think is valid for this, right? Again, more of a swing kind of idea here. But hey, the price action is there for it, right? And, kind of looking at some other things, I mean, EU, like we said, like holding this high the way that it did, and also kind of, again, internally sweeping. There is a divergence between, between the dollar and the Euro USD, right? Because again, Euro USD, this relative high here is the same as this relative low here on dollar, right? So dollar actually broke the low, but Euro USD didn't, right? Again, it did it with manipulation as well, right? So we do see these highs here that were built up, this high here that was built up, this high here as well that was swept with internal liquidity, but it didn't quite take that right there. So the order flow is present, man. The order flow is present here for me, I would say, with Euro USD as well, to potentially look for that same move to happen. Granted, it does look a little bit different in terms of the 4-hour time frame, and even the 2-hour rather. So we do have the 2-hour trap candle there on Euro USD, right? The 2-hour trap candles here as well, but it does have a bit of liquidity above, I would say here, right? Like those two highs are very close together, right? This one here as well. So personally, what I would like to look at is more just ignore these highs and just look at this high here. I'd like to see Euro USD drive above there and then go ahead and give the drive down, right? I think it's worth it to take an attempt after what we've seen here. And if not, right, then, and this does end up being liquidity, like we even spoke about, could be the potential, in episode 23, then again, I think this is going to be where we're going to go ahead and look for it again. But either way, I do think that this is now becoming worth it because of the way that price action went ahead and created that low on dollar and created this high here on Euro USD. There is some potential for, rather than having the sweep, that we rather just follow order flow, because we did take out a good amount of dollar buyers with that sweep of the low, right? Because think about it, anybody who bought since July 3rd, right? So basically since the last 10 days or so, anybody who's bought since then would have been retested by this one drive to the downside. Such a quick drive down, and I think it could be because again, we always like to look at intention, right? We always like to think about intention. And for me, that feels intentional, right? To me, it looks intentional that we went ahead and wanted to retest those buyers potentially before we see that 102 level happen. And I think that, with this drive to the downside that happened from here to here being so impulsive, I think it has a real chance of that being a bottom as well. So there's some reason to really look for this. If this does end up getting stopped out and the NFP low does end up getting taken, I think it's worth to look at it again and just wait for Euro USD to go ahead, like I said, and break that high there. But we're getting there, y'all. I think we're going to get there to go ahead and get towards that last drive there for 102. And, I think it's worth it for us to really go ahead and hold a position if we can really start to get some good buying happening here. So, yeah, guys, I'm kind of leaning towards the potential for the order flow, given the liquidity there on dollar. Yeah, we'll see if that can end up holding up for us, to go ahead and maybe reach Euro USD towards 1.1323, basically, 1.1323, right? GU, similar thing, right? Really just reaching back into that area. Granted, I can see how you could look at this as liquidity here. It's possible we take some of it, but I also think that I can see how we can even look at, this price action here as a potential distribution as it trades right back into that level. So very similar to EU, right? With GU, I'm going to want to see something similar too, and go ahead and see the market drive back up, right, into this level. Right? We can see as a whole, this is where the this is where the sweep to the upside happened. That went ahead and took these highs here, right? But, I think there's also some potential for us to take some internal liquidity with areas like this one here, right? So my ideal scenario for GU would be for us to actually take that, right? Give us a good zone here and then go ahead and start to drive us towards these lows to the downside, right? Is basically what I would want to see, and then potentially even new lows, right? We'll see how that goes. But I do think that if we do get the sell-off, we could be reaching even towards 1.332 for GU, right? So That's what I'm thinking there for the dollar pairs, right? We're gonna see if that can end up happening or not. I like EU and GU the best compared to like NU and AU. You know, those ones I don't really like as much. Granted, we could see maybe AU reach up to where it's there, but not going to be as clean as these ones, I would say. So we'll see how it goes, right? For order flow purposes, I'd probably want to use EU. If we don't get the order flow and we do get a sweep of the lows on dollar and a sweep of the highs on everything else, then maybe AU can end up being the one to play if we do get that scenario, because we are close to a higher time frame zone. So we'll see there between, you know, really just the different scenarios. We'll see how this ends up playing out. But I do like what I see for the potential push towards 102. So we'll see what happens there. All right. So we're going to move into gold now. So gold here, very interesting price action, kind of opposite to dollar in its own way, right? I mean, like we said, we kind of wanted to see price trade back into these levels. We do see some nice internal sweeps happen here, right? For gold. So like taking this low there, right? With this institutional candle down, right? And since then, man, I mean, kind of holding some order flow here, right? And even when I look at the way that gold is kind of shaping up right now, with this high, with this high, with these highs, I mean, that to me looks like we could be seeing some trendline liquidity potentially forming, right? We didn't even take this internal point here either, right? So I think this can end up being a target as well, right there, right? So for me, honestly, I would not be surprised to see gold head to the upside again, right? Could be, you know, like honestly, we might have already seen the area get hit. That's just going to continue us to the upside. But as a whole, you know, this is kind of that higher time frame manipulation idea there, right? Big sell-off down, impulsive phase here. We had the mitigation phase potentially there. We could see this low get taken because it is a wick on the 4-hour time frame. So that would be basically what I would hope for the most, would be if we can really get a solid candle below this low, right? Hold this level here at 4,000, 20, and then go ahead and head towards 4,200, 4,220, right? Right around those levels would be where I'd want to see gold head towards, just by the looks of how, you know, again, these lows happened here and the areas of which, you know, it happened and the way through which we actually got down there, right? Looks like it could be potentially sweeps, right? And same thing with silver, right? When we look at silver too, right? Trendline liquidity all the way, to the upside here, right? And then on top of that trendline liquidity, we've got the buyers really being manipulated down here, right? So could this just be a continuation of order flow? Potentially, right? Again, seeing price go ahead and break this low and then go higher, to me is starting to look like it could be shaping up. So I think that this week we might see price shape up for another impulse to the upside. And yes, exactly, Jordan. Yeah, so the DXY does push metals down, right? So DXY up with push metals down. Although gold does its own thing, me reading price action from a purely like just, you know, from a pure perspective of just what's happening on these charts, when I look at where the liquidity is, I don't see the liquidity to the downside here. I see it more to the upside. I feel like the buyers are having a tough time of it and the sellers are having a pretty easy time bringing this down. And I think that that's the case with gold as well and stuff. So it's possible, I think, that gold ends up doing the opposite and at least just reaching one more time up. Maybe later on we end up getting the push down, but I'm just following where the liquidity, I think that the liquidity is there. So because of that, that's why I'm looking for that gold push, even though we are seeing dollar potentially making its own push. So you are right that the correlation does work in that way, but also there is a lot of times where, again, price doesn't necessarily do that and gold does follow its own thing. Again, this is just kind of where I'm seeing where the liquidity is. This is what I'm seeing with the price action on top of the liquidity. It is kind of aligning for another drive higher. So because of that, that's what I like to see would be at least one more drive up for gold. But, you know, could be wrong, right? Could be that the dollar going higher does end up bringing gold even lower, right? But that's just what I'm seeing for the order flow there. Silver, honestly, though, a little bit less than gold. I think gold has better structure. Silver, like, these lows aren't really the best. But regardless, I do think that, out of the two, I would probably use gold. But I do think that the liquidity up there is still looking a little suspicious to me. That doesn't really look good to me. That doesn't look good to me either. But the lows, the way that this was created, right? The way that this was created, they look good to me. So because of that, I'm following that direction still. We looked for the push down first last week. Could be that, again, the push up happens later on in the week, right? Now, indices, right? So indices kind of in an interesting area, right? US 30 here, as we can see, ended up actually having sweeps right through there. Sorry, not US 30. NASDAQ here ended up having sweeps through here like we just spoke about, and actually holding this level here, right? So honestly, it is kind of looking like it could be reaccumulation, right? The way that we're kind of even keeping ourselves kind of in this like creek type of format, right? I would say actually from here, sorry, from this high, right? From this high, and then where do we really got the bottom creek? I mean, tough to say. Where's price really staying in most of the time? Maybe a little lower than that actually, right? Probably like this, right? And then we kind of got the drives that are coming down, kind of almost creating a creek that is seeing the lows really manipulate. It could be the case that this is, potentially gearing up for another push higher. So I'm actually going to kind of, look at this as some potential to actually long here, from the indices, right? So seeing as we have an institutional candle in that low on the 4-hour time frame, that could be a good area for us to look to long from. And then with US 30, I'm looking at it a little different though. I do want to see all these lows here get taken, right? Get back into the previous reaccumulations and then go ahead and long, right? That could be the potential of what we're going to see this happen. Granted, we did have that distribution there at the top that happened last week, so maybe we drive into there and then do that. But yeah, US 30, I like a lot less for the buys. If I were looking for the buys, NASDAQ's going to be what I'd rather look at. US 30 a lot less, right? And then yeah, S&P as well, again kind of sweeping through lows last week, right? Seeing how we went ahead and just broke below here on the Wednesday, right? Institutional candle driving higher, maybe we get the retracement back into that level. It is literally, it is a sweep there, right? So to me, that's how it's looking. It looks like we're not going to get that push lower that we wanted, right? So for me, I'm thinking we might actually be shifting back up into bullish, and that push to the downside there on NAS is showing the potential reaccumulation that's coming. So again, a sweep of some of these internal lows would be nice, and then see indices head towards that new high for, the new all-time high, right? And BTC, like we spoke about, never really reached this zone. I'm going to say we're still going to be looking to reach that zone before we look for more potential buys. So look to get BTC below 61, hopefully towards 60, to go ahead and look for our first set of long potential. Does that mean we're just going to buy in this area? No, right? We still need to see the market go ahead, get into this area, create another point of manipulation, and then give us the next drive higher. If we don't get this smaller time frame price action in this area, then again, it could be the scenario where price sweeps again, right? And then we end up seeing from there the market trade again to the upside. So I like the zone, just still be careful in here and just wait for your lower time frame confirmation, because we are looking at a 4-hour zone here, right? Daily time frame zone here, for BTC. So 60K, right, could be a zone, right? If we don't get the lower time frame confirmation, then we could be getting lower than 58, and then from there, I think, the longs are coming, right? The longs are on their way though, guys. I think the liquidity is going to build up here. We're going to get the sweep, and then we'll go ahead and long later on. All right, guys. So really, that's it. That's all I'm looking for in a nutshell here on this episode's Wyckoff Sunday, right? So dollar buys, I think, can happen, right? If not here, then we're going to go ahead and look for it a little bit lower inside of this imbalance. And then from there, look to long it. If that's the case, right, we'll probably see things like EU reach a lot higher, right? Reach into those areas, right? That's, again, the other example. And then, GU could even do that as well. But for me, I think I'm right now I'm looking for the potential of order flow to hold. Again, just because of the way that things happen there in those lows, right? Again, like my reasoning for it is more so like all the people that got tested by that one candle. That to me looks pretty intentional. So even if it's just a short-term move, right? I think that dollar reaching back into this level here at, 100.87, right? To go ahead and look for that next long is going to make sense for a potential swing. And if not there, then again, if we do end up breaking 100.55, that's fine. That means the idea is wrong, and we'll just take another attempt lower, right? Because again, higher time frame wise, we're still in an accumulation. We're still looking for 102 to get hit. All we're waiting for is for this reaccumulation to continue us to the upside, right? So that could be one more drive, or it could be holding current order flow, right? We just got to take attempts at both and see how it goes, right? But yeah, guys, that's that, guys. So yeah, hopefully you guys have a good week this week when it comes to trading. All right, I will catch you guys on the next one. If you guys are in the YouTube, appreciate you guys being on here. Subscribe, like the video, comment, and I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, much love, much appreciation. Peace out, guys. Deuces. Bye-bye.